ethnic determinism in this story is blatantly insane.
Now, the story in question I am talking about is All Star Comics issue 24. It was published in 1944, perhaps at the peak of DC's wartime propaganda. The writers were Gardner Fox and John Jenks. Now, just because there's an awful lot of them, I have put up the name of the individuals who have done the pencils and the inks and the cover, because this is one of the older comics. It is 43 pages in length.
Now, at surface level, this story had potential to be quite interesting. In it, this individual, Richard Amber,
who is somebody who's been recognised by Congress, is essentially saying that he does not understand why the US should be involved in Germany. It was an attitude that a decent number of Americans held at the time.
Now, because this story is, and this cannot be forgotten, wartime propaganda for the US, the way that it goes about smoothing over the fact that there is nastiness within the US's past, and the fact that the US has the right to act morally over Germany in this, is by resorting to ethnic determinism, right?
They wholly imply that Germans are inherently lesser evil beings.
Because this is propaganda aimed largely at children, so it is attempting to give a nice, easy, smooth answer which allows people to act with impunity rather than digging into the dissonance and considering the harms that the US has also perpetuated, whilst not justifying or excusing what Germany was doing. So the story is told in a very on-the-nose manner. Lady Conscience comes down to the JSA and agrees to send them back in time to show Richard examples of how German leaders have always been evil, cruel and violent.
Because individuals such as Oliver Cromwell and Andrew Jackson definitely don't exist.
Now, as far as propaganda pieces go, this is decently well written. It tells a compelling story. It does teach you some genuine history. However, it uses that history to repeatedly imply that German cultures and Germans specifically are lesser and inherently more evil than any other European empire was, or indeed the US themselves.
Base opinion here is that for democracy to exist elsewhere, Germans must be reprogrammed, re-educated and learn essentially to not be German.
So, what is being said here, right? At its root, I do not disagree with it. I believe that all of us who live in spaces which used to be empires or are still empires to some degree should be learning as much of the history of the culture of the land and of the government, and if there is one, the royal structure. That needs to be done whether you are in the UK, whether you are in the US, Germany, Russia. It is a good rule to attempt to try and avoid atrocities by understanding how they happened before. But that's not a German-specific thing.
Likewise, this formula for lasting peace could arguably be applied just as easily to the US, both modern US and US at the time of World War II. It certainly could be applied to the UK, and there is a reason why the Commonwealth, quote-unquote, dissolved after World War II. It was because certain levels of hypocrisy were pointed out.
Now, as a propaganda piece, it is decently compelling. It makes its argument, it presents evidence, and it gives you that little punch at the end. It also includes a smaller story within which shows how individuals can help with the wartime effort in ways that aren't directly confronting and using violence with the Wonder Woman sub-element. It is also, however, absolutely American imperial wartime propaganda. It says more in what it doesn't say and the way that it falsely attributes certain issues to ethnic identity rather than the system in which it functions.